port scanning software. It allows you to perform a variety of different types of port scanning methods, and I'll actually give all of you a couple of minutes to write down all these commands that have been displayed on the screen, or actually just write down the argument, that is -f, -x, -p, -u, -a and -2 or -8. So either you can specify a particular port number, like port 80 for example, or you can specify a range of ports as well, like 0 to 100. So depending upon what you wish to do, you can accordingly type the commands. I'll give you one more minute before proceeding with the next topic. Alright, so we have seen three different ways to perform port scanning, or rather three different tools to perform port scanning. We have seen maybe 5 or 6 different port scanning techniques. Let us now talk about the countermeasures. What are the countermeasures you can implement to prevent port scanning from taking place, or to stop a criminal from finding out a lot of private information about your system, your open ports, by performing port scanning? So first of all, it's important to understand that there is no foolproof countermeasure available against port scanning. So if you want to 100% stop a criminal from performing port scanning on your system, you can't do that. However, it is a good idea to close as many ports as possible on your machine. You should filter out certain packets using firewalls and your router access control lists and other filtering software. You can also use software like scanlogd, Black Ice, Abacus Port Sentry, Snort, and so on. What they do is they analyze the incoming traffic, they detect the pattern of a port scanning taking place, or you could even configure some of these software to send back fake data whenever port scanning is taking place. So if somebody is trying to find out what ports are open on a machine, these software will send back fake replies, which will fool the victim into thinking that some other ports are open, which are actually closed on a machine. So the idea is to mislead the criminal, so that the job of the criminal is much harder. So with that, we actually come to the end of yet another important information gathering technique known as port scanning. So port scanning basically allowed you to identify the list of open ports on a remote computer. Let us now find out how you can determine the names of the software running on the open ports. See, just finding out the open ports is obviously very useful, because it will show you different possible entry points using which you can enter a system. However, it is all the more important to try and identify the software that are running on each port, because just knowing that there is a door is not going to help you. You need to also find out what is the door made up of, whether there is some security loophole within the door or not, which is where the next information gathering technique called daemon banner grabbing is going to be so useful. Daemon banner grabbing allows you to find out the names of the software and the version numbers of the software running on the open ports on a remote machine. So if I am basically trying to hack into your machine, if I just port scan your machine, I will know, okay, these 3-4 ports are open. But if I also perform daemon banner grabbing, I can try to find out what are the software running on those open ports. And the good news is that daemon banner grabbing can be performed using Nmap. And the software that, or the command that you're going to type is the following. So basically you type SV. So let me go ahead and perform a live demonstration of daemon bannergramming. You have to wait for a few minutes for the output to be displayed on the screen. So if all of you look at the screen, we have some kind of output that has been displayed. Let me copy paste that into a notepad file so that we can discuss the output. So if you look at the screen, we have managed to perform daemon banner grabbing on ankitfadia.in, and it tells us that there are 4 ports open, and which are 23, 20, 21, 23, 25 and 80. Not only that, it tells us the service that is being offered on each port, which is FTP, Telnet, SMTP, HTTP, and at the very same time it also tells us the exact name of the software running, and sometimes even the version of the software that is running on that particular port. So for example, port 21, the FTP port on ankitfadia.in, is running Pro FTPD software. Port 80, the web server port, is running Apache HTTPD version 2. And the SMTP port is running Exim SMTPD 4.x version. So finding out the version names is actually very useful, because once I know the version name running on a particular website, I can just go online and search for vulnerability related to that particular version. So if all of you look at the screen, I just typed Exim SMTPD 4.x vulnerability. There are so many websites that have come up with information about vulnerabilities that affect that particular software. So in version 4.63, there's a remote root exploit that can be used. There's a YouTube video as well of a particular exploit, the string format, I think buffer overflow. Then on this particular website, you have a list of security vulnerabilities that affect this particular software. So not only so port scanning is obviously very important, but what is really even more important is daemon banner grabbing. Because port scanning will just tell you the list of open ports, but with just information about the list of open ports, you can't do much. If you really want to start looking for loopholes or vulnerabilities that you can use to hack into some server, you need to know the names and the versions of the software running on the open ports as well, which is why daemon banner grabbing is extremely, extremely important. So let us now see a formal definition of daemon banner grabbing. The process of getting useful information from the target system by recording the welcome banners of the daemons running on its various ports is daemon banner grabbing. It can be used to get the following information about the target system. One is the software name and version number, the operating system information, and most importantly, to identify possible points of entry into that system. So once you have performed daemon banner grabbing, once you know the names and version of the software running on the open ports on the victim's computer, you can quickly do a Google search and try to find out if there are any known vulnerabilities that you can exploit to hack into the victim's computer or website. The solutions are pretty obvious. If you are a system administrator and if you are worried about criminals performing daemon banner grabbing and finding out the names and versions of the software running on your open ports, you can actually edit the default daemon messages so that the actual, accurate, correct information about the softwares that you're running is not revealed. You can misguide the attacker by displaying false daemon banners as well. You can use a long false daemon banner in the background and you can display a long daemon banner, and in the background you can actually try and find out more information about who the criminal is. Now, another very interesting software which allows you to perform daemon banner grabbing along with Nmap is a software called ID-Serve. ID-Serve. Now, ID-Serve is actually extremely easy to use. I hope I have it on my computer. Let me try to open it up for all of you. Yep. So what it does is you just have to type the name of the name of the website or the victim, click on query the server, and within a few seconds this software will actually then reveal the exact web server information of that particular victim. So I typed mtvindia.com and it told me that it's running Apache 2.2.15 and CentOS. So now that I know it's running Apache 2.2.15, what do? I go to Google. So there are so many different vulnerabilities that are available or that affect Apache HTTP server 2.2.15. So I can use any of these vulnerabilities to try and hack into that particular system. Instead of mtvindia.com, let us try typing google.com. So I go back to the software, type google.com, click on query the server, and if you notice, Google is running some kind of maybe a customized OS called GFE version 2.0. Let's try say ankitfadia.com. It is running Microsoft IIS 7.5. If you remember the previous lecture when we used ping and traceroute to try and find out or guess the operating system running on ankitfadia.com or ankitfadia.in, we had guessed it to be Windows. And now using ID-Serve, we have actually confirmed it. It is a Microsoft IIS server. Similarly, let us check imt.edu. Even imt.edu, if you notice, is running a Microsoft server, Microsoft IIS 7.5. So these are the web server information, or the web server that the victim is running on the victim's on its server. So the name of the software is ID-Serve, and it's available as a free download on the internet. It is also possible to perform daemon banner grabbing using Scanline. Scanline, if you remember, I had shown you earlier as to how you can use Scanline to perform port scanning. Let me now give a demonstration to all of you of how to use Scanline for daemon banner grabbing. The only difference is add a B. Before T, just add a B. Let me copy paste this command. Once again, it's going to give me the same error message that 0 live systems. That's because of the firewall. I keep showing this demo to you to make a point that whenever possible, try and block out information gathering so that you are making the life of the criminal much harder. If you look at the screen, we did daemon banner grabbing on imt.edu. And within a few seconds, we have managed to gather some very useful information about imt.edu. It tells us that imt.edu is running a Microsoft FTP service on port 21. Port 25 is running mail enabled service version 7.07. I'm not too sure what that is, but we can Google it. Maybe it's a manufacturer or some software developer. And on port 80 is running Microsoft IIS 7.5. So now I can Google this information. Microsoft IIS 7.5 vulnerabilities. And there are a bunch of different websites where information about vulnerabilities or known vulnerabilities for Microsoft IIS, this particular version can be found. So that is daemon banner grabbing with scanline. See, up until now we have seen how to use automatic software to perform daemon banner grabbing. But to be very honest, it's also possible for you to perform daemon banner grabbing manually using a telnet client. And one of my favorite telnet clients is a software called Putty. And Putty basically allows me to manually connect to each and every port on a remote computer. And basically all I need to do is, in this space provided, type in the IP address of the victim and also type in the port number and try to connect to it. If I'm able to connect to it, I know that the port is open, and I also know the daemon banner that will get displayed, so I'll be able to record the daemon banner as well. But the problem with the manual technique is that it's very slow and it's very cumbersome. If you do decide to use Putty, you can actually telnet to port 80 of a victim, any website, any victim, and type the command head/http/1.0 and you press enter twice. And typically you will get some kind of error message that will get displayed on the screen, and within that error message you may be able to see, or you may be able to view, the exact web server information. So basically, using Putty, you can connect to a particular port, execute an error, or give an error, give a false command which generates an error on that system, because of which you get an error message displayed on the screen, and you can find out the web server information about that particular software. Yet another software is HTTP Recon. I hope I have it on my computer. I think I do. So HTTP Recon is specifically for daemon banner grabbing of web ports. So I type the website address here, imt.edu, and the port number 80, click on analyze. It will basically keep sending a bunch of HTTP commands. HTTP commands are basically commands that are used to request web pages from a remote system or a remote web server. And whenever the remote system in which